So we're welcoming all of you to our second open dialogue in our open dialogue series on bioregioning. This is a series that we've started sort of like in preparation of the R3.0 conference that will happen in September to prep us into some of the topics that we're going to discuss there in more depth. My name is Ralf Thurm. I'm the managing director of R3.0, and together with my colleague Bill Bowie, who's a senior director at R3.0, we're going to facilitate that session where we have three amazing speakers. You already see them mentioned here. And actually, Bill is going to present them in a little bit more depth after my introductory comments. And what I want to do is just to, after welcoming you, give you a little bit of engagement guidance so that we can effectively work together. And then Bill will take it over for some context setting and also saying a little bit more about our speakers and then really going into the presentations. And at the end, Bill will also going to present a little bit more about the R3.0 conference, about future dialogues in this series so that you are well informed about that. Here at the beginning, we use the normal Zoom workplace mode, so not a webinar where we normally don't see each other. We want to see each other, and we also want to have a lively discussion in the second part. So the only need that we have is that while we are in the presenting part, and when you're not asked to speak, please stay on mute. We definitely welcome that you have your cameras on because it's always better to see to whom are you talking. But we also understand if there might be occasions where you can't do that. We also have the chat sidebar, which is there for questions, and please write them down as they occur. We, in the background, will curate these questions to cover that in the facilitated dialogue segment, which is the second part of this open dialogue. For some questions, we might cluster them into groups for efficiency reasons, but we also may ask you to voice them yourselves. And in that case, we ask you to respect that everyone by keeping your question very succinct and on topic. And respectful, of course. There's also an open dialogue Google document, which prevents us to have too long of chat comments. So you can use that Google document as well to park information or link to other documents that you want the group to also see. And that document will also remain accessible after the session as a living resource. When you add something to that Google Doc, please simply also put your name down there so that we know who put that comment or that extra information so that we can identify from whom it has actually come in. And as you already know, we record this session for public posting on our Open Dialogues landing page on the R3.0 website, so that there is a possibility to have this library of open dialogues always available, and also for those who weren't able to come to the meeting. Okay, that's for me, and I'll hand it over to Bill here to actually take us into or bring us into the session.
Great. Thank you, Ralph. And greetings to everyone. Thank you for joining us here. I just got word back that the internet is back on at my house. So I may navigate back there, may switch to my phone to listen in and navigate back there, or I may stay at the Willington Public Library where I'm calling in from. Thanks again to everyone for attending this second open dialogue of the 2025 series of open dialogues. This year, we're devoting all of them to bioregioning. And This second instance, we are really excited to focus on the intersection between bioregioning and permaculture. Folks who we've talked to have said, yes, it is such a clear linkage and almost sort of obvious, but also we find not as much discussed in the bioregioning space, or vice versa, that permaculture talks as much about bioregioning. Certainly they're on the radar screen, but we believe that it's an area that warrants much more attention. And we're also very pleased to have invited 3 speakers. We're sort of holding our breath as to whether our middle speaker, Gloire Mudekuza, will be able to join us, but we hope that he will.
Bill, I think he's here.
Great, wonderful. So we have a full house in terms of speakers and all of you. I wanted to just briefly give a sense of the flow, and then, not spend too much time on the open contextualizing, but rather go to the speakers themselves. But just very briefly, Elyes Mkacher will start us out talking in particular about sort of grounding us in permaculture historically, and also in particular in the modality of the permaculture design course, which is the prime
And Bill, we're not hearing you right now. So my recommendation is, Bill, we're just checking in very quickly if we have access to you again. If not, then I will just simply let Elyes do his presentation. Yeah, I think we're not hearing Bill. So what I will actually do, just to let all of you who are on here know, we have Elyes who will speak first, and then we have Gloire Mudekuza who will speak second, and then we have just showing you, we have Julie Davenson who will be our third speaker in this row. And just another check if Bill is back and can hear and speak, and if not, then we're going with the flow that was intended.
I am here, Ralph, but my internet is unstable, so I think thank you for picking up the thread, and I think it makes sense to just hand it right over to Elyes.
Yes, and I'm just stopping my screen share now so that Elyes can actually start his screen share, and then we can take it from there.
Yeah, thank you very much. Just want to say that it's a real privilege for me to be here, and a real moment of joy to be among the R3.O community, the design school community, the bioregioning community, and the permaculture community, and maybe other observers. They are welcome. So I hope I will be fair with in my presentation with this important topic, the intersection of bioregioning and permaculture. So we'll start by sharing maybe my story, how I landed here. And so I was born here in a city we call Tunis, anciently known as Carthage. And I moved to my father's hometown in 2016, which is a little town called Chebba, anciently known as Caput Vada. It's actually 1,500 years old city, and Carthage is 3,000 years old city. And this is a picture of the bioregion I feel I belong to, which is the Mediterranean, because I always lived very near to the coast. And so my story with permaculture started in 2016 when I had my first permaculture design course here in Tunisia. And the permaculture design course was really a life-changing experience for me because I learned so much about so many things. When I landed there, I was more interested into self-sufficiency, how to be self-sufficient and stop being a simple consumer of everything, how to produce for myself. But in permaculture, I learned so much like about resilience, which is broader, I believe, and regeneration, and yeah, community, and all sorts of knowledge that everybody needs to face collapse. So after my PDC, or maybe during my PDC, I started thinking how to spread this knowledge, how to help spread this knowledge. And this permaculture design course was actually the mean that helped make permaculture a global movement. So it was developed by Bill Mollison, and he designed this course and started teaching it, and then asking his students to teach forward. And that's how, and not everybody loves teaching, so a few of them started teaching as well. But that's how permaculture spread around the world, thanks to this course. It's a 72 hours course. And I remember when I asked my teacher, like, how, if I want to teach it, how should I do it? He told me that I need to use this book, written by Bill Mollison in 1988. And this is the book that we use to teach permaculture, to go through all the aspects that we need to learn about. And it's there are really it's a holistic design science. So we talk about a lot, like about everything, about design, about pattern understanding, about climate, about trees and energy transaction, about water, soils, earthwork, different climates on the globe, aquaculture. And within every of these chapters, like, you really find all kind of topic we need to know about to do regeneration and resilience. And in this last chapter, that is called The Strategies of an Alternative Global Nations, again, many interesting topics here, and one of them is bioregional organization. So when I started getting interested into teaching permaculture, I had to go through this book. It's a thick book, and we don't really read it. We use it as a manual. So whenever you are interested in a topic, you just open that page and read about. And for me, it was hard to make sense of bioregional organization. I couldn't really get it in my first years, but still, and these are the 5 or 4 pages about bioregional organization in Bill Mollison book, and I will read this part. I actually put it in the next screen here. A bioregional association is an association of the residents of a natural and identifiable region. This region is sometimes defined by a watershed, sometimes by remnant or existing tribal or language boundaries, at times by town boundaries, suburban streets or districts, and at times by some combination of the above factors. Many people identify with their local region or neighborhood and know its boundaries. So I really recommend to find these and read what Bill Mollison had to say about bioregional organization. But this book was written in 1988, and I think it's very visionary, and it's before internet became like everywhere, and he really like give very interesting pathways how to organize bioregionally. And in terms of food, shelter, technology, communication, what we, so despite the fact I was not really mastering the bioregional organization, maybe chapter or many other chapters, because when you teach permaculture, it's so broad, like the different topics that you need to know about, and you cannot be expert of everything, but you need to understand the connections. And in permaculture, it's a lot about connections between the different fields, across fields and across scales. And it was fine that I was not an expert in everything. So, sorry, my screen. Okay. So I went 2 years after my PDC, I started teaching permaculture, hosting weekends and hosting permaculture design courses. And this kept me very intrigued about every section in permaculture, to try to learn more about it, and to keep doing research, to be fair with my students. So this, until in 2023, I joined the design school for Regenerating Earth. And in the design school, I could make much better sense of bioregioning, and I could see, I could have that bioregional eye to recognize the different bioregions we are in. And very much thanks to also this specific section in the design school, there is a great wealth of resources, and one of them is Introduction to Earth Systems, where Joe Brewer really showed how we need to look at the Earth to be able to regenerate it. And I love that vision, to regenerate the Earth together. I think it's an emergency. And so, yeah, I could learn more about bioregioning and why regenerating the Earth becomes possible only if we learn how to organize around bioregions and start working, regenerating bioregion by bioregion, and helping, going across also bioregions. So that's in the design school, I was inspired to start a hub around the Mediterranean region. So the Mediterranean, I had to ask the question, what is the bioregion I belong to? And so the bioregion, even now when I talk about it and try to simplify it, I say that a bioregion is a territory with a similar landscape and culture, or common landscape and culture. So the Mediterranean for me is an obvious bioregion that is very fragile, and that we need to organize around it to regenerate it. And it has a common culture, a common history, and a common future. So with the friends from Karim and Hadi, and then many other places around the Mediterranean, we started meeting monthly and trying to talk about this vision to regenerate the Mediterranean. And also in the design school, I was really privileged to host a permaculture design course there for people who are already in the design school, or who are working on bioregioning, many of them, and who felt the need to do the permaculture design course. So we are very happy about it, because we think this will help weave both communities. And so I want to end with a message that for both communities, permaculture and bioregioning, I think that bioregioning is a permaculture practice, and every permaculture practitioner need to think at a bioregional scale and act at a bioregional scale, as much as need to think across fields and across scales. And also the bioregionalists or bioregional practitioners would find in the permaculture design course really a great tool to learn about earth systems, about how natural systems, how to design regeneration, and to learn to also how to design any project they want to do in life in a regenerative way. So yeah, both communities, I believe, really need to start working together and unite around the vision they share about the future of Earth and humans, and organize together the regeneration of the Earth. So yeah, we'll stop there. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Elyes. I am glad that I got your slides beforehand as I was driving home, and I missed some of it, but I really appreciate in particular your focus on the role of the permaculture design course. And just for sort of a show of hands, how many people here have taken the permaculture design course? Great, there's a few hands here. If you could just throw that into the sidebar, if you've done the permaculture design course, just throw that into the sidebar. I just think that would be an interesting, data point, if you will. We're getting it visually here for the folks who are going to watch this on recording, but then we'll also get more sort of durable data in the sidebar. Great. Well, that actually, Gloire has his hand up as having taken the permaculture design course. I think that makes a lot of sense. And in preparing for this session, this particular perspective that you're going to be presenting, Gloire, of the application of permaculture principles and practices in the context, a place-based context of forcibly displaced communities is, I think, a particularly interesting intersection, and one that I think is promising for both the bioregioning community and the permaculture community and the refugee community globally. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to you, Gloire.
All right. So thank you very much, Bill. I'm so happy to be here, and I'm very privileged to be into this call today. Thank you, Elyes, for sharing all this inspiring. When you've been speaking, actually, a lot of things was flowing in my mind, and I'm grateful to hear from you. So, for those who do not know me, my name is Elyes Mudekuza Gloire. People call me Gloire. Gloire, it's a French name, of course. And when I'm now when I came here in Uganda, which is an English-speaking country, people were struggling to call my name, and I was like, okay, let's just put Gloire, and I was glad from that. So I am a refugee from the Democratic Republic of Congo. And I'm currently living in Uganda in a refugee settlement called Nakivale. And I'm so very happy and privileged to be here and much more looking forward to this. So I don't know if I have the access, if I can be able to share my screen. All right. Great. Can you see my screen? Please thumbs up if you can.
We can. Right. Thanks, Gloire.
Good. Thank you very much. So as I was sharing before that my name is Gloire Mudekuza, and I am a refugee from the Democratic Republic of Congo. I fled my country 8 years ago, running to save my life because of the war outbreak in eastern part of the Congo that you might probably be seeing on social media what is happening about the eastern part of Congo. where I'm originally from. So when I fled, I came here in Nakivale Refugee Settlement and I became a refugee. It was a very long journey and a long story throughout that. So, but also I am a founder at Plethora Social Initiative. I'm a founder at Plethora Social Initiative, a refugee-led organization. We aim at empowering refugees in regenerative agriculture and skill development to build resilience, but also to live a dignified life in a refugee settlement. And this call of beginning this initiative was with a very big purpose, because when I reached here in 2017, I was shocked, I was desperate. I didn't find a place where I can be able to call home. I was away from home, and when I reached here in Nakivale Refugee Settlement, I was lost because of the experience that I've been through. Not only the experience, but looking like I have left everything that belonged to me behind my back, including the loved ones. Reaching in a corner where there is no opportunities, children were dying because of malnutrition. We have a high rate of death for children because of a high malnutrition. But also we have people causing suicide because of the trauma all around their displacement experiences, but also a lot of things was happening. And today, and that was a very big call for me to start this Plethora Social Initiative, to be able to help my fellow refugee from building a sustainable livelihood, but also bringing a lost hope by creating something that truly brings hope among refugees in a host community. So I'm so glad that I'm going to take you through about actually what I intend to speak about, which is permaculture in the displacement setting, a pathway to resilience and hope away from home. Of course, permaculture, it's a very big approach, but I'd like to actually narrow that approach, but also giving you a real experience from what we've been doing in the displacement setting, and show you how it is a very great pathway to resilience, but also bringing a hope away from home. Maybe first I should be able to differentiate something. There is a very big difference between migration and displacement. When we've been actually talking this with Bill, we were looking at displacement, but I felt like it doesn't really speak so well, speaking it in the migration setting, but speaking it to a displacement setting, because that is the very big term that really resonates with refugees. So allow me to let you know that, of course, all of us, we know what migration is. And in my research, I found that migration refers to a voluntary or involuntary movement of people from one place to another. But the purpose of this movement, it is looking for a better opportunities of life, such as employment, education, improved living conditions. Someone can leave this city to go to another city just to look for better schools to study from. Job opportunities might occur there and they feel like, okay, I want to be there, and many other things. But displacement, it is totally different with that. First of all, displacement, it's a forced migration. You don't want to leave, but you are forced. Either you want, either you don't want. Still, the only option for you to leave in terms of saving your life. So you are forced to migrate as a group of people or an individual, but also you are forced because of conflict, either or persecution, natural disaster, or a human right violation. And these are the things that also made me to be refugee, because I never want to leave my home. I wanted to enjoy the rest of my life together with the loved one, together with my family, my parent, or the place that I've ever known, a place where I was born, and many more. But I was forced to leave my country with tears. And I found myself a refugee, something that I never wanted. None have ever wanted to be a refugee. Allow me to give you a clue of what it means, the word refugees in Uganda. Uganda is hosting more than 1.5 million refugees, different from different African war-torn countries, including my country, the Republic Democratic of Congo, Rwanda, Burundi, Eritrea, Somalia, South Sudan. We have Eritrea and Ethiopia. And in this is as of 2024 report of the UNHCR recording in 2024, a cumulative total of 80,000 refugees asylum seeker application have been received. Of the 20% are refugees from South Sudan, other 23% are from the Democratic Republic of Congo, making it in only 1 year having 80,000 refugees from different war-torn countries coming in Uganda, being forced and coming in Uganda. And the statistic shows that this will increasingly keep on happening because we are still undergoing conflict and war-torn countries in African region. And this is a very overwhelming situation. This is a humanitarian crisis that is happening actually in Uganda and many more. So when you reach in Uganda, these people come, they are settled, they are put into refugee camps. And when they put them in refugee camps, they give them only a sheeting. I'm not going to say a place to live, but a sheeting with poles and to make living there. And when they reach in Nakivale Refugee Settlement, as you can see the picture here, that is how the setting looks like. They give you a sheeting and they put you in the bush, so you find lives yourself. And because of the war that has been actually happening in Ukraine and across the world, the World Food Program, the WFP, have stopped cutting all the humanitarian assistance on food rationing to refugees across Uganda. And as you can hear, the USAID is also looking ways forward to stop the aids toward refugees. And all of those things are creating a chaos in Nakivale Refugee Settlement, leaving refugees with no livelihood in Uganda. So these things are resulting to limited employment opportunities. I have been a guy who was very, very motivated to search for opportunities, but in Nakivale Refugee Settlement, there is no limit, there is no access to employment opportunities that create chaos, theft, and many other bad behavior because of the limited employment opportunity, but also poor livelihood. Imagine the World Food Program have been giving each refugee $3 to cater for their monthly expenses. $3. Who can live with $3 per month? I think none of us here can live for $3 a month. And what is horrible, they have decreased even the $3. So 50% of refugees in Uganda, they are no longer receiving any aid from the World Food Program. Yet these people are living with only this as an income. And life is becoming worse and worse and worse. Mental health challenges. When they reach here in Nakivale Refugee Settlement, people struggle. I've been among the people that struggles with mental health challenges. One day I wanted to commit suicide, but I got help because of the problems, the struggle, and the post-stress, the PSDT I don't know if that is the term, the post-stress disorder. And a lot of people are actually they're having a mental disorder because of the thing that they have been through. They saw their parent being killed. They saw their wives being raped. They saw their children being raped. They saw a lot of things. And when they hear, they live with those memories and they are causing a lot of things. We are witnessing suicide here in refugee settlement because of all of this situation. As a result for this, it is environmental impact. When we come in a very small area, at 1.5 million refugees across Uganda, so there is that overwhelming, there is that overcrowding that until people explore nature without using the regenerative techniques that leads to an environmental degradation and climate change impact. And mostly it is food insecurity. We have people in Nakivale Refugee Settlement eating once a day and eating twice after 3 days. So it is a chaos. Among children, we're having a lot of trouble when it comes to food security in Nakivale Refugee Settlement. And above all, refugees, we are identified as beggar, but not givers. We are just receivers, but not givers, because we depend on humanitarian aid. And in most cases, humanitarian aid cannot sufficiently provide for us. We have to find ways to make sure that we build the resilience in our own. So permaculture has been a very big approach that we use in Nakivale Refugee Settlement as a pathway to resilience, to see how we can be able to sustain our livelihood, not depending on humanitarian crisis, not be called again beggar or receiver, but create a platform and an environment, change the narrative on how these humanitarian organizations sees refugees, and create a narrative of fostering food production, but also resilient among ourselves. The first thing is that we are enhancing food security on our own using the permaculture techniques, the permaculture principles, and all this rich knowledge of permaculture. We are able to grow our own food to enhance food security in Nakivale Refugee Settlement. And for this, we have witnessing people now eating twice a day, eating 3 times a day, because of the techniques of permaculture that we are implementing at Plethora Social Initiative among refugees and the host community. We are restoring the environment. Permaculture is an approach, as my colleagues has shared, that restore the environment with the regenerative agriculture techniques that we are using. We are actually fighting with people who are still using chemicals to fertilize their land, and these chemicals are actually destroying our Mother Earth, and from the next generation, we shall not really have answers to give to our children if we're still using this in Nakivale Refugee Settlement. And we come as Plethora Social Initiative to end this narrative and be able to restore the environment with regenerative agriculture practices. We are fostering social cohesion among people who come from different countries with all of this burden in their heart because of their experience. When they come here, they feel like they belong nowhere. But when we bring them together around the permaculture design course, we are fostering social cohesion, bringing also host community in our permaculture design course, but also refugee among refugees. And we start learning on how to regenerate our soul, not only regenerating our soul, and start shifting from even regenerating our soul, start also shifting on how we can come together and co-create as a community, forgetting what we've been through as struggle, and see how we can build a brighter future that is full of hope and aspiration. But also strengthening economic resilience. When we teach people how to grow their own food personally, they are able to grow not only for home consumption, but also taking to the market, so that we are also fostering a green economy and a green market among refugees in Nakivale Refugee Settlement. And to these practices, we have been seeing people taking their children to school because of selling their produce, and that actually fills us with hope as an organization. But also, we are building it all a sustainable livelihood. So now, how do we do as Plethora Social Initiative, Plethora Permaculture approach in Nakivale? So this is, ladies and gentlemen, our approach. We train refugee farmers on sustainable farming techniques that restore soil health, improve food productivity, and increase livelihood opportunities. We are establishing a permaculture demonstration sites. How do we do that? We are actually bringing all the community together and go out there to design a permaculture demonstration site that schools are utilizing for learning purposes, but also the community is also contemplating to go harvest food that they can be able to eat for their daily consumption. We are promoting soil regeneration because the soil that we've been given as a refugee, the soil has been degraded because of unhealthy practices that people were doing in this soil. But with the permaculture principles, design, and practices, we are able to promote soil regeneration throughout our practices. And we are also fostering a community-led food production and an income generation. And we are happy to see farmers witnessing an increase of 30% of their production, and we are much more looking forward for them to produce more and build a sustainable livelihood among refugees. As you can see this picture, oh, I don't know why others did not show, did not come. As you can see, the first picture was a gathering where we come as a community. If you don't mind, I might even share them after that picture. We come together and talk about the things that matter, including ourselves as refugees, but also about our planet and how we can be able to thrive and forget the past experience. The second picture, we are actually teaching the permaculture techniques and principles on how to grow crops sustainably, making the spacing and many other things, and ecological farming and more. As you can see me there to the third picture, showing how they could be able how can farmers be able to justify their crop to yield more and receive more food on table. The third photo is a photo of our graduation for the permaculture design course. It's an graduation that we've been holding, and as you can see right there, it's me facilitating the permaculture design course under a tree because of a certain reason. But also, I'm also there into our farm, one of our farm, looking how cabbage are actually increasingly and doing amazingly well. So we are now moving to a bioregional center. We are looking at Plethora Social Initiative, how we can be able to build a center where we can bring all the refugees together. We are hosting our permaculture design course under the tree because of a lack of facility, and we are actually calling to good wishers, goodwill to come together to help us weave into a bioregional learning center that is going to be a bioregional community learning center in refugees, because we never had such. Looking at how can all the refugees in Nakivale Refugee Settlement can come to the center, learn about healthy practices, regenerative agriculture, permaculture, but also not only that, and see how we can be able to heal our internal wound that we've been throughout when we were fleeing our country, and see how we can foster an economic development, but also a resilient, not basing on the past, but being able to foster life in a foreign land. So we are actually calling upon people. We are still even fundraising for this to make sure that it happens, so that we can even train more in the region, so that they can expand as well the knowledge of permaculture. Because permaculture, you teach, you are taught, you teach, and you teach, and you teach. And that's how we can be able to restore our planet and our land. So we are looking forward to bring more to this bioregional learning center, teach them ecological farming and healthy practices to maintain our environment clean, but also healthy and they can be able to transfer the knowledge for the future generation. Why is that? Because one, we are looking at a place where we can be sharing the knowledge sharing and the capacity building into regenerative agriculture. Not only that, but having an ecological restoration and land stewardship. We are looking at how we can be able to have an ecological restoration in Nakivale Refugee Settlement. So that, because as more years are going, humanitarian assistance are being cut. And it is going to be another humanitarian crisis in refugee settlement if and only if we are not taking measures for regeneration and resilience. And permaculture is a way to go. And we are looking how this bioregional land sensor can serve as an ecological restoration and having land stewardship. Sustainable livelihood development, but also a place to nurture the lost hope. So thank you very much for listening to us, and we are much more happy and enthusiastic to share how we actually are restoring the land, but also how permaculture is actually making a very big impact. And we are calling upon you to join hands together and come together with us to the journey of regeneration among refugees and host community in Nakivale Refugee Settlement. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloire. Let's let that all sink in. Really very inspiring work that you're doing there. In particular, I appreciated how you talked about the relationship between the inner healing to the PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome, or disorder, excuse me, and the external ecological environmental healing that permaculture and regenerative agriculture bring to the table. So thank you for that. And I think that this is teeing up a great question and answer session. So a reminder to folks to put your questions into the sidebar and comments into the Google Doc, which we'll be able to see afterwards. I think there are a few comments that are specifically geared towards you, Gloire. I also appreciated this linkage between permaculture and the broader sense of regenerative agriculture, and that's a great bridge to our last speaker, Julie Davenson, who we've asked to do that sort of widen the aperture, broaden the lens of our inquiry. I've just realized that I first encountered all three of these folks on the Co-Fund Eco community, the co-creating funding ecosystems for regeneration that was an organic outgrowth of the R3.0 funding governance for systemic transformation blueprint. And Julie, in particular, lives in the same bioregion in the Forest of the Northeast / Dawnlands. And so we've also been collaborating on the bioregional, in the bioregional context. And so I know that Julie's work spans both regionally, but also nationally with the Soil and Climate Institute. And so I wanted to ask Julie to give, both to focus on permaculture as an anchor, but also to scope us out further to regenerative agriculture and policy issues more broadly. So Julie, over to you.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here today and grateful to be invited into this community and space and to connect with all of you, and looking forward to the discussion after. Let me just bring up my slides here. I am having some technical difficulties, so I think we're going to have to bear with my It's working. It's not. Okay, good. I fixed it. I'm not having. So I was having technical difficulties earlier, but great. I'm glad we're in good shape now. I just want to start with the lens from where I'm approaching the bioregional work that I'm doing in community in the Northeast. And connecting it to the work that I do for my livelihood, which is on a national scale, working with regenerative and organic farmers across the country. But in the context that I work in our bioregion, what has attracted me to bioregional work, which started here, not officially on this day in this photo, but when I was working on the farm that's in this photo. It was an agricultural education center and working organic dairy farm and organic market garden farm. And we hosted a lot of events. And on this day, we were hosting Alan Savory, who taught holistic management at a Grazing for Change event. And interestingly, I met some people here on this day that I'm continuing on this journey, one of which is part of our bioregion in the Northeast. Amelia is in the photo. You may not know or recognize her, but just to point out the relationships that exist when we come together to learn in community. But bioregionalism supports regional resilience and governance structures in anticipation of increasing global instability. I think we saw some examples of that. And right now here in the US, we are facing political instability as we see existing centralized systems show signs of strain and fragility and collapse. Bioregionalism is a hopeful endeavor for humanity. Permaculture's emphasis on relationship with local ecosystems naturally aligns with bioregional economic models that recognize the carrying capacity and unique characteristics of each region's land base. The benefits of permaculture is that it focuses on local resources, using them sustainably, and reducing dependence on imported goods and strengthening regional economic resilience. And by designing cyclical systems where waste becomes a resource. And then last, permaculture's focus on diversity, both ecological, social, and economic, creates more stable regional economic systems that can withstand environmental and market fluctuations. Here in this slide, you'll see two farms that, through my work with the Soil and Climate Initiative, we host field days on farm. These are two regenerative and organic farms based out of Minnesota. We were hosting field days so people could come and learn about what they're doing. And these are two farmers working in very different systems. One, you have a system where poultry is being integrated into an agroforestry system, and another you have cattle integrated with a variety of different grain crops. Both farmers are working to incorporate a variety of regenerative practices. And also, it's a bridge. What happens when farmers start this transition journey, and these are at larger scales than what I'm going to be talking about a little further in the slide presentation today, where we have smaller scale, more diversified farms. This is a bridge and a stepping stone to start to connect and build relationships in their local community. As you can see here, both farmers are hosting field days, and they do that on a regular basis with their community, inviting other farmers to learn. Farmers tend to learn best peer-to-peer relationship. And so that is connecting them from what is in a conventional system can be very isolating and selling on large commodity global markets. This is a stepping stone to creating regional markets within their bioregion and also developing relationships and connections. But I do want to point out that regenerative agriculture exists along a continuum of interpretation and implementation. While there is no standard definition, at its most basic level, regenerative ag focuses on transition practices like no-till farming and cover cropping to improve soil structure. But it also extends to a more profound paradigm that encompasses holistic management. And in its fullest expression, regenerative agriculture seeks to transform socio-economic relationships throughout the agriculture and food value web, echoing what I would say the original vision behind the organic movement, permaculture, and agroecology. And though there are overlapping principles between permaculture and the deeper interpretations of regenerative ag, it's crucial to acknowledge that both approaches, or all of the ones I've just mentioned, draw significantly from indigenous land care knowledge systems. And these methods of working with rather than against natural systems that are not modern innovations, but rather rediscovered wisdom that has been sustained by cultures for millennia and proven effective across diverse landscapes. So I'm going to go to the next slide. So there are various applications for permaculture, not just food systems, but also water management, knowledge commons, and building and community design. So I want to go through and share a couple of examples that I'm connected with in my area of the bioregion, which extends to New Hampshire and Vermont. The first here I want to share is the Abenaki Land Link Food Project. In this project, growers have shared the resources, time, skills, and land to grow Algonquin corn and bean varieties. This is an opportunity for growers as attendants for the land that has for millennia been stewarded by Indigenous people to recognize the privilege they have to grow food, an option not currently available for many Abenaki citizens in Vermont. And by participating in the Abenaki Land Link project, growers are doing so in solidarity with the Nahigan Band of the Kasuk and Abenaki Nation to build a more resilient food system. Related to this project is another group, Farm Force. It's a program of the White River Conservation District. And here in the United States, throughout the country, we have local conservation districts. They are locally led extensions of local government, and they are governed by local community board of volunteer directors. And so this project came out of a 3-day convening where land stewards throughout Vermont came together wanting to create an alternative to our corporate-led dominant system here in the US and create something that's more grassroots funded. And so what they did was they created a program called Farm Force, and over this, and it just started this spring of 2024, and they have made amazing progress. They are planting agroforestry on numerous farms throughout Vermont. They planted over 500 trees into silvopasture systems. They have also spearheaded the Hickory Oil Project, which has land access agreements for farmers to gather this product and produce, and they've also produced regional hickory maps. So they've mapped the landscape of available, and they're producing oil, which is a product that's, contextually relevant for us to grow and produce. And then the Land Care Cooperative, yet another Vermont program led by Abe Collins, who's been a regenerative pioneer for decades, and he is working with farmers in community in his watershed to use immediate science and land feedback to help them restore their lands and also develop a livelihood. So as opposed to participating in carbon credit programs that don't offer locally led or regionally led governance systems and often build upon extractive commodified systems, they're offering their services as land stewards to their local watershed and municipalities while also producing food and doing so in community. Here you can see their values outlined in their statement. And we can leave our children deep topsoil watersheds and economic democracy. So they're driven by values coming together in community and restoring their watershed. Another project I'm deeply involved in, I'm a member, and I'm also on the board of the Northeast Organic Farming Association in New Hampshire. We have this organization exists throughout the Northeast with its roots the organizations were born with the organic movement that started here in the Northeast. And every year we host what's called the Craft of Farming program. And this is a great example, I think, of developing knowledge commons and where we visit different farms to learn about the practices that they're incorporating, learn about their farm business. We welcome the community to participate and learn. You don't have to be a farmer to participate in it. You could be a home gardener or somebody who's just interested in learning about the food system. And so we're creating valuable connections and relationships. We're sharing knowledge, and we're doing it in multiple landscapes and multiple contexts throughout the state and the region. And we often do this in collaboration with Seacoast, New Hampshire Permaculture, which is another example of a local knowledge commons. They host a lot of educational events, also on-site programs, and also steward an online knowledge commons. And then this example is based out of New Hampshire. The crafts school at Mill Hollow Works, their motto is "We are making future makers." And really what they're preserving are a lot of the development of like skills that we've lost due to industrialization of not only our food system, but also our fiber system. They offer all kinds of classes, bringing together community, everything from sharpening old tools. You'll see some axes there, but they've also, have workshops where you can learn how to sharpen draw knives, which are used to debark trees. So a lot of hand-powered tools and work. They also teach boat building classes, basket making. Here they have a flax to linen workshop, and also the same sheep to shawl, and the list goes on. So, and these programs have been very successful. It's something that they started just based on their own interest and talents, and they've been able to sustain it for quite a few years. And they operate in different community centers throughout the region without the overhead of a single center. And last, I want to give some examples of how building infrastructure and design can be incorporated into both community and food systems. This work is spearheaded by Martin of Village Roots Permaculture. He was asked by a local arts venue and cafe to create a welcoming outdoor space that incorporated food and places to connect. He designs buildings that are food security infrastructure and community spaces. They build with local harvested and milled lumber and use traditional techniques when possible. Using local lumber supports the local economy and also supports working forests. We have a lot of forests in our region. This is a vital part of permaculture, and the broad scale forest garden meat supply food, fiber, fuel, building materials, etc., as well as ecological services, all while paying people to work the land. And in this example here, this is a community food shelter and hub that he built. He does a lot of work with hay bale building and structures. I think he's also used some of the structured insulated panels that are sourced from Vermont using sustainable materials. And this is also his own permaculture farm where he integrates chickens into silvopasture. And last, he also designed a shelter in our community with edible gardens. And so there's lots of planting of fruit trees. And their intention was to create a highly productive, self-maintaining garden that is building topsoil and adding ecological services on the property where it can be found. Their built components, raised garden beds, arbors, benches, and planters are made from local white cedar and hemlock and are burned, a technique that helps to preserve the wood. So you can see there's a somewhat of a contrast between the slide that I showed at the beginning, more large scale production that's still somewhat part of a commodity system, but they're incorporating principles of permaculture or regenerative agriculture in their system. which leads them to more connections in their communities. And then I showed you some on-the-ground examples of what's happening at a grassroots level in our community to incorporate principles of permaculture, not only in food production, but community and building design and knowledge commons. But there remains a great hurdle and challenge because we're operating in a global context that's currently entrenched by global supply chains and trade agreements, concentrated power in food and agriculture sectors, and consumer expectations that are shaped by global markets, and then a severe lack of regional processing and distribution infrastructure. And resourcing that infrastructure will be critical to not only continuing the good work that you see is happening now, but expanding it to build resilience. And so last, I'll just leave with a couple of slides that talk about bioregional economic policy frameworks, ways that we can support this transition that's needed, establishing legal frameworks, recognizing ecological boundaries rather than political ones, protecting indigenous land rights, water sovereignty, and traditional ecological knowledge, implementing commons-based governance for critical resources, economic transformation, developing regional currencies and complementary exchange systems. The Land Care Cooperative, which I showed earlier, they have created a complete bartering system within their whole network of farmers where they can trade services so that they don't need to access capital and incur loans and debt, but they can create their own forms of currency and ways to support and research each other in their work. And so we need to redirect agricultural subsidies right now to strengthen regenerative and organic practices in our agricultural food systems, worker-owned cooperatives, creating place-based incentives for investing in local infrastructure and communities. And that's my goat. I have livestock and a farm that I'm starting as well that's incorporating livestock and perennials. But we need to also support agriculture and forestry. We are losing many, many farms here in the Northeast on a regular basis. And, due to the current political climate, we are seeing a lot of farmers facing complete bankruptcy and potential closing. So we need to do a lot of work to protect that, but also to protect the knowledge that these land stewards hold, and ways to continue to facilitate sharing that, which includes shoring up support for education and social support, peer-to-peer learning, support for indigenous knowledge preservation and application, and integration of permaculture and ecological literacy into the school curricula. And last, indigenous foodways and trade routes. In terms of a modern bioregional application, we could map trading routes along watersheds and time trading schedules around regionally harvest seasons, and then fostering complementary relationships between different ecological zones. And so, building first with these local permaculture principles, incorporating to rebuild our local economies, but then still foster trade among and between bioregions. And so it's great that we're all here to connect today and talk about ways we can build resilience in our bioregions based on permaculture principles, but also extend that beyond our bioregions in a more sustainable way than the system that currently exists. So thanks for having me here today.
Thanks so much, Julie. Really, really rich presentation. And we've got some questions already queued up. I wonder if Wendy, are you able to go off mute and just voice your first question there for Julie?
Yeah, sure. Julie, thank you so much. What an incredible presentation. And thank you to all the people who presented. I have learned a tremendous amount listening to you today, and I'm incredibly grateful for you taking the time, putting together the presentations and sharing your knowledge, your wisdom, and your experience with us. Julie, my question was for you because I tend to be a person who likes to kind of get the meta picture and see where the patterns are. And I very much recognize that your you have a very much a bird's eye view to a lot of different projects. And I know that that can generate some really interesting learnings of what's happening between, not just within each project, but between and across the projects. And I was just curious if you would speak to that a little bit, what you've taken away from sort of the common threads or the gaps that exist. I think you spoke a little bit to the gaps in terms of the challenges, but I was just curious if you wanted to speak more about that. I'd love to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, it's, I'm digesting that daily. I feel like oftentimes I'm living in two different worlds, and sometimes I feel like just on a larger scale, we are working in regenerative agriculture. It's still operating within a corporate dominated system that has been extracted. And personally, I don't have a lot of faith that that will ever resolve itself. And so, but those farmers are still doing incredible work and need to be supported because they're continuing to do that work that will, I think, ultimately, what I see is them ultimately leading to a more regionalized approach. And a lot of the farmers that are on the leading edge of this are creating their own connections in communities and markets because the current system is not sustainable. And we know that. We've seen that with the global pandemic. We've also seen it with political instability across the globe, not to mention the climate issues. And so I feel I highlighted some of the examples I did today because I feel like they have the ability to be resilient. But right now, I know that all of them struggle to do the work that they're doing because they're operating it in this context that is globally dominated by large concentrations of wealth and power. And so we need to find ways to resource these people on the ground so that we can grow and build a more resilient system. And I'm not finding that happening in ways that are sustainable at the moment, but I'm hopeful that the bioregional work and potentially the work of the bioregional finance facilities will be able to do that. And earlier, Bill spoke to the fact that we met at the Co-Eco Fund system, and I know the work of Ben Roberts and that entire community has been working hard to find ways, as well as other funds like Kinship Flow Fund. So and I think we can all contribute and participate in that. Just pick one thing that's happening in your community that interests you, that excites you, and get involved and help it out. So we all have ways that we can, contribute and grow to this movement. So I don't know if that answered your question at all. It's a very large and big topic, but happy to talk offline too some other time.
Great. Thanks so much, Julie. And we have another question for Julie in the queue, but I'm going to hold off on that one. And Neil, thank you for your grace on that. And open it up to questions in particular for Elyes and Gloire. We are running tight on time, but we generally will, keep the line open after the formal end, recognizing that the speakers in particular may need to drop off at the bottom of the hour. But if folks have questions for Elyes and Gloire in particular, Ralph, I thought we did a little bit of back and forth, and I thought you might have one to kick us off.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. Thanks to all of the speakers, really fantastic. And I was, of course, also part of the prep calls for this session. And what struck me when we were talking to Gloire was really very much in connection to the sheer size of the what is often called migration movement, but I think we've learned it's the displacement movement. Jonathan Porritt put out a report last year, which he called the Exodus Equator, and where he said that we're going to see around about 1 billion climate refugees, he called it, by the year 2050. Now, just the sheer size of that number and the need for them to relocate in connection to permaculture or what Bill called place-based solutions for the displaced really is something that struck me. And I just wanted to not ask, but make that point, and maybe it raises other questions, that there is a size of displacement that is going to happen in the next 2.5 decades that will make what Gloire just presented something that needs to happen in everywhere and in all bioregions and at all sort of islands of coherence that we will actually have left after an economic system collapse, because we're in the middle of that. So I just wanted to incentivize that idea that what Gloria just presented on small scale is something that we need to do in a much, much, much larger scale in the next 2.5 decades. And that is why bioregionalism, also as an economic system design, is so important, and where place-based solutions need to be much more professionalized to actually deal with that sheer size of the problem. And yes, it's not a question really, and maybe it instigates comments, but if not, I at least addressed the topic.
Well, Gloria, over to you if you have any sort of commentary on that sort of growing need to address this displacement, and particularly forced displacement, and essentially the scale potential for applying an approach like Plethora is doing.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Ralph, for that. But that is the fact that we all know that we are into a critical time and a critical era right now, that we really need to take immediate actions that will help us sustain the future, because the future is now uncertain because of the thing that is happening across the world. And as I've mentioned in my presentation, that we have 80,000 refugees living each year now to come in Uganda. And that reflects to the report of the UN that is going to be increasingly, we're going to actually receive more displacement across the world. There is to the political instability, not speaking about climate change because it's just so horrible. And I think this is a solemn call to all of us as regional, as earth regenerators, to see ways forward and to start building partners that are going to help us not falling into this chaos. And if it happens, at least we have a way to go, and we have the alternative to live. And this is because when we talk right now about some people right now, when it comes to permaculture, they don't understand, regenerative agriculture. They don't understand. They just want to go about farming, and having our land mismanaged. But in the future, if we're really not taking immediate action, we shall be sinking our next generation, and it will be horrible. As I mentioned, that they will have questions to ask us, and we will not have answers if we don't really have an immediate, for example, to my country, my homeland. We are actually witnessing every day here in Nakivale Refugee Settlement, we are receiving more than 500 refugees every day. This is one settlement because of the chaos that is happening across the eastern part of Congo, where I'm coming from. And we should be able, as we came into a refugee setting before them, we should be able to design something that when they come, at least they find a refuge in a refuge. I'm not sure if that makes sense. To find a refuge in a refuge. And this is the way that we are trying to do as Plethora Social Initiative, as an organization. But we cannot do it alone. We have to be a movement that is going to be behind a right cause. But thank you so much, Ralph, for bringing that.
Thank you, Gloria. And we actually have a follow-up question that's in some ways along those same lines. Kate, if you might voice your question, and then in the queue, Neil had a question in the sidebar, and then I saw David Berman and Sanjay's hands up momentarily. So let's see if you do end up having questions, you'll be next in the queue. But Kate, let's hear from you, and then Neil.
Thank you, Bill. I'm very interested in the way Bill Mollison credits indigenous land use practices and farming and agriculture for a lot of his understanding. And I would really just love to hear from Gloire and Elyes the extent to which you feel permaculture is enabling you to learn about, go back to, unlearn modern practices. So what is the connection for you in your permaculture with traditional practices, please?
Maybe go to Elyes first on that.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Kate, for the question. Yeah, I would like to talk a bit about like how permaculture is really, I mean, we saw beautifully in the presentation of Gloire and Julie how permaculture can look different from one context to another, and how it's relevant in very different contexts. And yeah, that's, I believe, because permaculture is based on ethics and principles that are universal, and that can be applied in very, very different contexts. And it's not always linked to land, because you can do permaculture even if you are in the North Pole or in the Sahara in the middle, or in the middle of a boat. You can do permaculture. And I saw a question also about marine permaculture. Yeah, that's possible, because when we apply permaculture principles and ethics in any design, so that's permaculture. And we need to, permaculture teach us how to do people care, how to care about people, about ourselves, our body, and our mental health and physical health, but also about the mental health and the physical health of others around us. And how to do earth care and how to do fair share. And we saw like really good examples with Gloire, how it really helps the refugees in our time now, the time of collapse. And and how to build resilience. Even if we are not yet in collapse, we need to prepare for that. And we have a lot to learn from this kind of work that is being done in the collapse. So yeah, I wanted to really appreciate that. I'm not sure how to frame it, but yeah, I know that Bill Mollison was very well inspired from the indigenous people, especially in Australia, but around the world. And he worked a lot also in different continents across the world. And when it comes to maybe I can share more about how permaculture helped me stay in place, because I was at the time when I made my first PDC, I didn't know yet where I should settle down. And maybe 99% of my peers, they were looking at Europe, you know, the American dream, to go there and find a job and make money and then go back, build a big house, have a car. And so I didn't want that, but permaculture showed me another dream, like that is much more resilient and sustainable, and with much more meaning, which is to build my own self-sufficiency and community, and to regenerate the land around me, and to learn about the land and all the common and lost knowledge that is here, to try to preserve it for the next generations. And so permaculture helped me, and I think many others, to love the place where they are, and to start working locally, to act locally and think globally, but also some of us to act locally, think locally, and act globally and think globally. Also, Bill Mollison talked about this, that it's a duty for us now also to think and act globally, and to try to reach out to other practitioners to collaborate, to build coherence, and to work together to regenerate entire landscapes and continents and entire planet. So yeah, I hope I answered the question to Kate.
Great. Thanks, Elyes. Gloire, do you have any further comments on that? Okay, great.
Yeah, great. Just thank you very much for bringing that forth. It's just a few things, but I think Ellie has brought it so well. Yes, we when we grew up, we saw our grandfather having traditional agricultural practices that we all opted when I was growing up, or no, I grew in Africa and I had those things happen. But when I came across permaculture, it changed all my narrative. It really changed all my narrative. One, because permaculture is based on principles. It means you do this, there is a reason. We all know what principles means. It means that if you follow the principle, the results are guaranteed. So, but when we look at, for example, the permaculture works with nature, focusing on, regeneration and sustainability, working with nature, not against nature. But when we look at the traditional practices at one way or at the other one was often extractive, focusing on maximizing a short-term yield, and if you are maximizing a short-term yield, they come into having other fertilizers that are not organic but are chemicals to make sure that they maximize a short-term yield, rather than permaculture, it looking at how do we work with nature, but we're not working against nature, because it's a principle of regulation, looking how do we work together all along with the nature, but not actually working against things, but also looking at enhanced fertility through practices that are really, really connected. Not only because when we look at that, we are having people here, even in Uganda, here, we had people when they come into our PDC course, they have been actually using a lot of traditional knowledge, but when they come to Plethora Social Initiative, learning about permaculture, it's a life-changing, and you're like, oh, we wish we knew this. We wish we knew this. And I'm so glad that Ellie said that the very big difference is like we are working on principles that are going to restore all the ecosystem.
Great. Thank you so much. And I'm recognizing that we are sort of at time, so to speak. So totally understand if folks need to drop off. Thank you very much for attending. And Elyes, Julie, and Gloire, if you're able to stay on, that would be great. We do have a few more questions in the queue, in particular, Neil, and then Claire, and then Midi had some questions. So why don't we take those and call that a session, and we'll gather questions beyond that, and share them with the speakers in case they have further commentary offline. But Neil, over to you, and then Claire and Midi in the queue.
Thanks, Bill, and thanks for the wonderful session with three inspiring speakers. I just want to pick up on Elyes's point about the context being so important, and the fact that you've got this spread of contexts. I want to honour the work that Gloria is doing. The PTSD element, the necessity is the mother of invention element. We have to learn how to do this stuff here is so critical. In the global north, we still have the privilege of participating if we want. And so my question is to Julie, in the context of the political unrest in the United States at the moment, and in the growing collapse awareness as institutions and funding and people are literally being thrown out the window. Is there a growing recognition of the need rather than just the strange attractor want in the permaculture movement? And how do we get that more rapid shift, the gradient, by increasing the awareness of collapse and increasing the communication around how we can start to address it. And I know that what R3.0 are doing here, and with the confluencing processes that we're trying to bring together, there'll be multiple wisdoms being brought together to say, what can we do together? But I really think it has to have the collapse awareness front end as the lever, which is literally tilting the whole playing field into a new system state very soon. So just wondering how much of that driver is there and how much can be assisted to move further, faster on behalf of all.
Yeah, that's a great question, and we're trying to figure that out as we live it. I would say that those of us who have been operating, particularly like small holding farmers, we're used to operating in difficult circumstances. And so, for instance, like with the Organic Farming Association, a lot of the grassroots connections and community that has already been built, I think those are important important bases that I think a silver lining we'll see in this is that in our context in the Northeast, we'll learn that we can't, self-reliance is not how humanity survives. We need each other and we need connections. And so I think some of the communities where permaculture, organic agriculture have existed, they've long recognized that. And I think we'll see awareness start to build as the impacts unfold. We have been doing a lot of network weaving with lots of groups throughout the Northeast and also nationally to create a space for people to come together and help each other and support each other. But honestly, I feel like we have a long way to go. We're just beginning to understand what the impacts will be and how we can get resources to the people that need it. Because there's a lot of farmers right now who are just, facing closing their farms because they won't be able to make payments that are due. And then what I'm fearful of is what happens to that land. There's been a lot of corporate purchasing of land, not only here in the Northeast, but across the country. And what will that do to land access and food production and sovereignty? So I think I honestly have more questions than answers to your question, but I think there are networks that exist. And the more people start to join those networks and participate in them and help them, it will strengthen the response. But yeah, so it's, I think, new for us here in the Northeast.
More questions than answers, I think is understandable at this particular historical juncture, Julie. Thank you. Thank you, Neil, for the question.
And just a very quick comment back, that facing reality and living the questions is so critical. If we don't face reality, we're not asking the right questions.
Thank you, Neil.
Yeah, thank you.
Claire, are you? Yes, you're still on. So over to you, and then Mitty, and then we'll close things out with a few announcements.
Yeah, thanks. This is wonderful. So I no longer live in South Africa, but I was visiting in 2023, and my brother was taking me around the Cape and pointing out how the refugees that were flooding into South Africa there was no, the only space that was available, and people were just, I don't think it was organized, it was just that was available with the low-lying wetlands. And you could just see the ecological disaster that could happen, but how miserable it would be, especially during the floods that were happening there, for refugees to be going there. And what I'm wondering about is sort of at a strategic level and a policy level. I was really inspired by what you were talking about, Gloire, with being able to communicate with, just wondering about like what could be done. I know that Michael Pilarski's on this call. Just wondering how what you were talking about with, it's just like all of the different positive benefits of having permaculture programs that are not only about local food sovereignty, but also about, seeing it as an asset rather than as a problem, and starting to kind of actually do that in a more thoughtful way. Yeah, so I guess I'm just raising the question, but I was inspired and just wanting to connect the dots.
Gloire, over to you.
Oh, great. So thank you very much, Claire. I'm so very happy that you asking that question, because when refugees are coming, they are into a place where it is, you can see that, as you say, the landscape, the flood, because even here in Nakivale where we are, I wish I could get just 5 meters to me. It has been raining since 2 days, so, and it is chaotic. There is a very big flood. So we are looking at many ways.
Did we?
Yeah, we lost him.
I'm
We
looking.
lost him.
I think we lost. Okay, well,
Lost in the flood.
We'll see if he comes back and give him an opportunity to continue speaking. I think, Mitty, your question was in some ways geared towards Glory. So do you want to pose it, or shall we save it to send across to him offline?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to hear his response, but I also think it's a larger question for the field, is how do we do communicating and storytelling so that at a policy level, this is something that starts to be like seen as, rather than a problem, it's actually, there's an asset here. And I just don't know that storytelling has been happening enough. And I think that Glory, especially what he was sharing, I think that would be really helpful. So.
Cool. We will make sure that he gets that sort of further, or if he has further thoughts, is able to share that. And then also, Mitty, I guess I was also speaking to you about whether do you want to pose your question, or shall we shoot it over to Gloire for answering offline?
I think actually, in many ways, this is a question for the global north, because so I think I'll put it into the container, and
Great.
I'm not sure that there will be any answers, but I think it's an important question. We have a very active collapse situation in the bioregion that contains Los Angeles. We've had 200,000 people displaced, some of them only temporarily, but many of them continue to be displaced. And I can certainly testify firsthand from observing friends and family who have lost their homes that PTSD is alive and well in this bioregion. But there's another kind of displacement which has really taken my attention, because there's the displacement of toxic waste. When you have collapse in a city of the nature that we've had in LA, you have literally billions of tons of toxic waste that has to be disposed of. And the big question is where? We've actually already seen the kind of displacement that it really doesn't resolve the issue, because the Topangans have been wonderful at protecting the Topanga Lagoon. And what's happened is that there is a displacement of the toxic waste to other areas in the greater Los Angeles hinterland. And nobody wants toxic waste in their backyard. But we've all created this toxic waste through the lifestyle that we've been living in the global north. And my question is whether we can tell the story of LA and find a way to address it through permaculture principles and ethics. So it's both a question of how do we address these citizen protests and help the population to recognize this is all our toxic waste? And how do we apply those principles and ethics to change, to influence and change policy decisions here in the global north? And essentially not put it on boats and send it to the global south. This is our problem and we need to deal with it.
Profound question, Mitty. Thank you. Elyes, Julie, thoughts on that before we close things out?
Yeah, I can go on. Yeah, I mean, we need to work across bioregion for this specific reason, like to learn from each other's experience across, different borders like global south, global north, and west and east, and focus on what we can do and what we can learn from each other. I just want to mention that permaculture, just to simplify it maybe more, is based on ethics, earth care, people care, fair share, and is based on principles. Some are called attitudinal principles, and the problem is the solution is one of them, a way to look at things. And some are called design principles, and these can be applied in any context, any scale also. It can be, all sorts of scales. And also there is a primary principle that Bill Mollison quoted, which is to be responsible of our own existence and the existence of our children, which means, for me, my understanding is we should not rely on the government, especially, to provide for our needs, like the food and security and, the shelter. We need to learn how to do it as a community, and to do it to be resilient, because the government, they can collapse and they can mismanage things. And we need to build the infrastructure and the skills and the knowledge that help us face collapse that also happens cyclically, I mean, in nature, with all kinds of civilization or projects. Permaculture help us build resilience, do regeneration, and do redesign, which are the 3 R of R3.0. So and that's my conclusion, I think, after this beautiful conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take that that note about our name. Julie, over to you for last comments, and then I'll bring us home.
Yeah, no, I think that was a great summary and suggestion. I'm not sure I have anything more to add immediately, but I think us showing up here in these conversation and dialogues, but also I feel like in what's a very overwhelming problem, I feel like for me, how I've been trying to approach and make that change is by connecting with the examples I highlighted in my presentation. And so in realizing that we need each other to survive. And so connecting with other groups and people to build that resiliency is key. And so I think that's where I've been focusing my time and energy in response to what's a rapidly escalating problems, not only here in the US, but across the globe. So, and I feel like both the government, but also just the global control corporations have intentionally tried to isolate us from each other, because then we're reliant on the system that exists. And so I feel like just the act of like connecting and working with each other in community is building the alternative that we need.
That's great. Thank you so much, Julie. Nice way to end this. Thanks to all of you for staying on the line. Ralph, if you'll bring up the slides, I'm just going to share some information about next sessions that we're offering. So on the next slide. So we actually have our next 2 open dialogues scheduled. So the next open dialogue in March is with the South Asia Bioregional Working Group, and we've confirmed that Ashish Kotari, who has spoken in our conference in the past, and Nisha Mary Palouse will be speaking, plus others we're in the process of nailing down. They have quite a body of work to represent, and so they're looking at having other speakers as well. So that'll be on March 24th. On April 17th, and that's actually April 17th on one side of the date line. It'll actually be April 18th for our speakers in Australia. Evening time for me will be Australian bioregioning with Michelle Maloney, who will also be speaking in our conference, Mary Graham, an Indigenous scholar, and Kieran Kashyap with Region Sydney and Region Melbourne. So we'll be announcing those on our landing page and on social media. When we share these slides, that'll be a link to our open dialogues on bioregioning. And so that's where you can go to get the recording and slides and link to the resources document for this session and all of the open dialogues on bioregioning. We also are hosting a parallel set of dialogues on carrying capacities, and we've just now nailed down our next session for that. I'm really excited about this one. We'll have Mark McElroy, the godfather, if you will, or one of the godfathers of context-based sustainability, talking about a context-based assessment of bioregional carrying capacities. So that'll be the 21st of March, morning time here in the US, and this is our bioregional carrying capacities landing page on our website. Thanks to Alexandra for getting that significant website revamp happening. Finally, 2 more slides on our conference is coming up in September the 9th and 10th, and we are adding speakers as we go, and we've just updated the website itself with text and context on the overarching theme and also the sessions themselves. And we've just added the registration page as well. And so you will be able to register for that going forward.
As of tomorrow, Bill.
Oh, excuse me, as of tomorrow. Thank you, Ralph. And then lastly, we're inviting expressions of interest from bioregions to host confluences. The confluence is actually a modality that was prototyped at our conference last year by Neil and Anne, Neil who was on the call. And so we're taking that prototype and tweaking it to apply explicitly to the bioregional context. And so we're inviting expressions of interest for folks to gather in person to watch the conference material and do any kind of deliberations that they need to in their own bioregion. These are autonomous; they can run them however they want. We're just offering them the benefit of that material that we'll be offering. And then the day after, on the 11th of September, we will host a Confluence debrief day where we'll share learnings from across the globe. We do have expressions of interest from nearly across the globe at this point. And so we invite you to make one of those expressions of interest. And again, this link will be in these slides when we share them afterwards. And I think yes, thank you very much. Ralph, any final words from you before we say our goodbyes?
Just to say that we're aiming at posting the recordings and the deck somewhere tomorrow. Don't know exactly when that will be, but after the weekend you will definitely have access to that. And as I've also mentioned, the conference website is up. We're just waiting for the inclusion of the payment process, and that will also be up most likely within the next 24 hours. All right.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. And we look forward to seeing you at a future open dialogue or carrying capacity session or the conference.
Yeah.
And/or take care.
And thanks to all speakers,
you.
to all participants. Thanks for your patience.
You.
Take care.